Okay, hey everybody. Hello, hello, hello. And welcome to Satsang. I'm so glad that, boy, people are showing up nice and quickly, maybe even waiting. I'm so glad you're all here. I need to refresh here and make sure so I can get to the questions on my device for reading questions. There it is. We're live. Very good. Very good. Let me turn off the sound. So, as always, please just type who you are, where you're listening from, watching from. Even if you've done it every time before, it's really nice. Helps get the chat going. Alan says, "Good evening, GP. Hello there. Greetings from the county of Kent in the UK. Good to see you and be part of this satsang." David and Alina. Colchester in the UK. This is Alan is in the UK. What else we got here? Outpost Gouda is online. Hey, Haron. So good to see you. Hello from Bulgaria. Greetings, G. Another rare day off. Brian in Virginia has a day off, listening from Virginia Beach today. Excellent. Wonderful. Is it actually on the beach? I know that's the name of the town, but are you actually on the beach? Is it that warm out there? Um, so thank you all for coming as the numbers continue to rise. We have Maluga from or Mayuga from Slovenia. We have Samuel Cohen with you from Israel, and let's see, Eternal Inside from Athens, Greece. Wow, wonderful. Listening, I see, good afternoon from Inner Aesthetics. Good afternoon. Listening in from California with my 1-month-old daughter. Oh, wow, wonderful. Wonderful. Congratulations. Congratulations. That's really special. Masufa from Iran is here. Hi there. Did I say that right? Mustafa. Hi from Iraq. Oh, not Iran. Iraq. Emiliano from Sweden. Wonderful, 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 wonderful. So, as always, this is our time. For some of you, it may be the only time during the week that you have to actually stop, put your attention inside, and focus on what I consider to be the most important question in the human kingdom, and that is the nature of our own selves, the nature of what we actually are. And you've heard me say it a lot, and I think I would like to elaborate on it. And by the way, is the sound okay? Somebody did mention to me yesterday that they'd have a hard time hearing me, and I can't really control the mic volume. I will be getting a new setup at some point where I will be able to control it better. So I'll just be a little bit closer to the mic today for everybody so that I make sure everybody can hear me. Ron said, "Sound is perfect." Yes, sir. It sounds great today. Excellent. Excellent, excellent, excellent. We have a beautiful spring day. It's Ista, and she's in Louisiana, right? To everyone present or not so present, whatever the case may be, beautiful Louisiana. Jalisco, Mexico is Johanna, and sounding great, sounding great, sounding great. Excellent. Good. Glad we got that. I've been, I had a little bout of sound karma that I had to deal with. Anyway, amidst all of the things we do to develop ourselves and to grow and to expand, to overcome obstacles and to overcome our limits, whether they be externally imposed or internally imposed. They're all internally imposed, but that's not always the way we perceive it. Sarah's here from France. Wonderful. Hi, Sarah. So good to have you. But in all of our progressing, our growing, our learning, our developing, I so want to invite you to consider the biggest question of all. There's nothing wrong with growing and learning and expanding and all that. It's fine. But the bigger question of who we actually are doesn't get nearly enough attention. And we tend to, especially if you've been exposed to non-dual teachings, even my non-dual teachings, there can be a sense that it becomes something, oh yeah, that's right, I'm pure awareness, I'm pure consciousness, I'm beingness, I'm the isness. And it kind of stops at that point, and we never actually pursue it more deeply. So I wanted to just take a moment today and to talk a little bit about what it means to be consciousness. And as always, I invite you to examine it experientially, to actually look at your actual experience. Because, our experience, the experiences we have, are deeply colored, even distorted by our interpretations of them, by everything we've learned about them, the things that we've been taught about the nature of us, the nature of the self, the nature of reality, the nature of matter and the universe, the nature of the rules of God, the rules of your tribe. Those have colored our perception of our own experience, and also kind of alienated us from the kind of self verifying interaction or engagement and inquiry into our nature as conscious beings. Now, at first, I want you to put aside all the non-dual thinking and non-dual ideas that you've had. Right? I'm not talking about consciousness is boundless and you have no limits and you're never born and you're never going to die. Let's start more simply than that. Let's just look at the prevalence, the singularity of consciousness. Let's forget about we even know what it is or where it came from or if it's going to last past death and if it was there before we were born or if there are multiple lives. Put all of that aside for a moment and instead just notice that consciousness, whatever it is the vehicle through which absolutely everything is experienced. Without consciousness, right, there'd be no experience. I mean, even if you existed without consciousness, so what? I mean, who actually would exist? What would that be? Consciousness is the medium through which experience happens at all. Matter of fact, having an experience requires consciousness. Right? So there's absolutely nothing in our lives that isn't experienced and known through the lens of consciousness. To me, when I think about that, when I look at that, it makes me realize how absolutely significant it is, and makes me dumbfounded that there hasn't been more research into it by everybody. When you consider that, I mean, science kind of relegates it to just some kind of accidental thing that happened when matter got complex, right? So the idea is that maybe artificial intelligence will become complex to a point where it will become sentient. The idea that matter is sentient, even though when you look at matter, you can find no structure of consciousness. You can find no center for it. Even in the brain, you can find no center, some place that can be isolated and saying that's consciousness. We can't find. I mean, there's no such thing as the consciousness molecule. It is completely mysterious. It is completely inexplicable, and yet it's everything. Even saying I'm not the body or I am the body is based on perceptions that are being had by consciousness. So the only thing that I would that I would I want to get across at this moment is, I think we have every right to not only say I am conscious, but to say I am consciousness. Because nothing in my life is experienced except in consciousness. If anything defines me, it would have to be that. So it may seem like a little jump to go from being conscious to being consciousness itself. Now again, I'm not saying whether it's produced by the body or matter, produced by circumstances, produced by, I don't know, divine light or energy or anything like that. I'm just looking at what I actually experience. And consciousness is pervasive. I mean, were it not for consciousness, I wouldn't even know I had a body. So it's even more primary than the body. Maybe it came from the body, but I wouldn't know that were it not consciousness. So I would invite all of you, not just now, but for a while, as long as it takes, so that you really feel comfortable with that thought that I am consciousness. I mean, even if this incredible structure that is the body, right, is grown in that level of complexity, I mean, what is the pinnacle of it? What would be the point of it, except to be self-aware? So even if it does arise from the body, the consciousness that we are is much greater than the body, even if it's producing it. And we can question later whether that's which one came first, consciousness or the body. But for right now, let's just wonder at the pinnacle of the entire thing. I mean, I don't say I'm my pancreas, right? I am my fingernail. I say I am all of it. All of this comes together to make a single unified thing, right? This thing that I call my body. You know, trillions of cells, thousands upon thousands of processes and little structures and chemicals and all sorts of things, all making up this one functioning thing, and the point of it being self-consciousness, self-awareness. Which means that I really have the authority to see myself as consciousness. And I'm just going to invite you to ponder that first. Because until that kind of lands, that really everything is experienced through the medium of consciousness. It's all I actually know. Until that happens, saying where consciousness originated from, whether it came from matter or it came from divine light or it didn't come from anywhere, it's just timeless and birthless. Before you can examine that, you have to accept the premise that you are that. At which point, if I am that, then I have the absolute ultimate authority for determining what consciousness actually is. If that's what I am, of course that's what you are, that's anybody is. Even all the scientists with all their apparatus, all their instruments, the linear accelerator at CERN has no more access to the truth of consciousness than you or me do. There's no special advantage, because consciousness is something that is only known from the inside. It's not something you can pull out and look at and examine. You know, the idea that you can is what leads people to study the brain, right? Well, that must be the origin of consciousness, so we'll study the brain. So there's kind of this objectification of consciousness. Now, I'm not saying it's true or not. All I'm saying is that if you regard yourself as consciousness, not just something that is consciousness, that is conscious, but actually conscious, consciousness itself, then you are in the only legitimate place to determine the actual nature of that. And it's got to be coming from your own direct experience. And at that point, nothing outside can tell you anything about it, because nothing outside can see it. You can't see it. It's simply what you're experiencing. And it is the fact that you do experience at all. And to me, that's the wonder. That's the mystery. How we can actually be conscious at all. And the wonder that, if I'm not conscious of something, for all intents and purposes, it doesn't exist. We can imagine, well, it exists somewhere, comes on my stage, and then goes off my stage. But I have no evidence of any of that. When it's out of consciousness, if something that is not in consciousness has no existence in practical terms. Forget about existentially whether it actually exists somewhere or not. But from your direct experience, it simply isn't at all. Only a thought of it. But even that thought just comes and goes. So I just want, just very simply, start out there. It doesn't have to be a long discussion, but I want you to ponder that. I want you to become turned on enough by the mystery of it and the wonder of it, that you ponder it. Is that what I actually am? And if I finally come to the conclusion that yes, that is what I am, I can then start exploring the nature of consciousness by simply getting to know myself. So, once again, welcome to Satsang. I'm going to go back here a little bit. Sounding great. Sarah from France. Ivan says, I feel the awareness as my real highest self, perceiving everything that is coming to this body, every sensation, every feeling, and the waterfall of thoughts in the mind. But I don't get how the awareness that I am is the same as all other awarenesses, and we are all one. It feels that the awareness that I am is connected to this body only. That's, yes, that is what it feels like. That it is, that awareness somehow is localized. But now, I don't know if you've ever experienced any virtual reality. I mean, even a 3D movie, right? There's a very visceral sense of being present within that space that you're in. Everything is being perceived, and because of the nature of our perceptions, the nature of the senses and the way we perceive, it appears as though everything that awareness actually is located somewhere, that consciousness is here. What I would suggest that you do, Ivan, first thing, notice that the others you're talking about, you really have no idea what their actual experience is. You have no idea. Really, if you want to get even more strange about it, you have no idea if they even exist, except as an image in your mind. The way, all the people that you experience in your dreams at night are all you. None of them actually exist. So the only place you can go to answer that question is not wondering about them and what they're experiencing, but actually exploring more deeply the nature of awareness itself. And more importantly than that, who is it that's actually aware? We refer to my awareness, or I am aware. There's a subtle sense of being a finite, separate person there that is experiencing awareness. But awareness isn't an attribute of some person. Right? The only thing that can be aware of awareness is awareness. The only thing that can be conscious is consciousness. Nothing else can be. So the reason it feels localized is because you are seeing yourself not as awareness, but as someone who is aware. You are seeing awareness as an attribute of a person. Now, the way to begin to dismantle that is to explore who this I that is aware actually is. And where is it? Whenever you start to explore the sense of being a person, you will find qualities, attributes, characteristics, you'll find memories, you'll find associations, you'll find patterns of thought, patterns of behavior. You'll find all of that, but you won't find a person. You won't find anybody there. You'll only find all of these qualities and attributes and characteristics. That's because the person that we think we are is a self-image projected upon all of these other things which don't inherently have a self. There's no self there. There's no self in this body. There's no self in any thought, is there? The self has to be the one hearing the thought, looking at the thought. There's no self in any feeling because they zoom, they back, they come and go. The self needs to be whoever it is that's actually having that feeling. And the same thing is true of all our sensations. The sensations don't have a self in them. They are something that is experienced by a self, by consciousness, by awareness. And so, as awareness, imagine you were in a virtual reality and video game, and you were put into a little tube, this little tube, and you couldn't get out of it, right? But you could hear things, and it had a couple of little holes so you could see stuff, right? Now, of course, you're not in that, are you? You're experiencing it as if you are. And in fact, if you didn't realize that you were in a virtual reality, you'd think you were actually contained in this little cylinder with a couple of cutouts for your eyes. Well, that's exactly what you're experiencing. It's a virtual reality, and you have just been convinced that you are contained in and limited by the body. You're saying, oh, you're in your head. You are, that's where you are. That me, somehow, consciousness is located, I don't know, somewhere in here, a couple inches back from the third eye or something. We are mistaking what we are aware of for the actual nature of awareness itself. So I'm aware of this body. I'm aware of the immediate surroundings. But let's take it even a step further. The wall across the room from you that you're looking at, right? Or even the computer screen that you're looking at right now, which is a couple of feet away from you, right? Are you experiencing the computer screen out there? Or are you experiencing it right here? Do you ever experience anything out there, or is everything experienced here? Now we have thoughts that it's out there, but yet all I'm actually experiencing are various thoughts, images, and sensations, all within consciousness. Is consciousness bound by any of that? That's the question. We assume it is. Somehow I got stuck in here. And it can be a computer screen 2 feet away from you. It can be a car out in your driveway that's 20 feet away from you or 100 feet away from you. It can be a star. You look up at the night sky and you look at the star, you're not seeing it out there. You're seeing it right here. We have this idea of things being out there. We have this idea that we are in space and time. And yet space, time, stars, galaxies, all of it appears where? In consciousness. If it doesn't appear in consciousness, it doesn't exist as far as we're concerned. And what is appearing to consciousness has the limitation first of our senses, and then secondarily the limits of our beliefs and our perceptions. All of those are what are ultimately perceived by consciousness. But is there any limit on what consciousness can perceive? So it's the kind of thing to actually explore. Well, where do I end? That is, where does awareness end? And if you really look, everywhere it appears to end, you'll realize that ending is appearing in awareness. And wherever there's an end, there's something beyond it. There's a wall, there's something beyond it. So I can't give you an answer, say, well, here, look at this, this, and this, and see, because it's not like that. We're deeply ingrained in the idea of being a localized consciousness. That is, I'm a consciousness in this body, in this point in time, and so are you out there. So, as I said before, first determine that you are consciousness. Then you can start looking at it and saying, well, is consciousness localized? Is the consciousness that appears to be here different than the consciousness that's over there? Is the space in Seattle, where I am, any different than the space in France, where Sarah is, or where any of you are? Is the space there any different than the space here? If you take that space and you take all of the content out of it, take all of the objects out of it, and just have the space, is there any division in the space? Is there any sense of a here or there? Here or there are all defined by the objects in space. Space without objects cannot be defined. Matter of fact, in all the mathematics and even Einstein's whole theory of relativity, that space was the relative distance between two objects, space, and that's the space-time continuum, the distance between them, because of the speed limit of light, right? So take the objects out of space, and space becomes indefinable. And the space here is the same as the space there. You take all of the objects out of consciousness, and you just have conscious awareness. Take any sense of a me, any sense of an other, any sense of an object, any sense of the body, any of that, and what's left? Undifferentiated, indivisible, singular consciousness. Now, to really realize that, the sense of I has to let go of the sense of being a person and completely merge with that infinite consciousness. So there's no one left that has a consciousness. The only thing left is consciousness. It's what Papa G said to Muji. If you want to be free, you must vanish. The you think you are has to vanish. And what will be left will be boundless consciousness. And again, I invite you to explore all of this for yourselves. Don't take my word for it. Find out. Just explore and explore and explore and experiment and probe and look and inquire till you become convinced that that even if you don't know what consciousness is, it's clear that it's the only thing you ever experience ever. Everything happens through that medium. Which means that is more important than anything I'm aware of. The fact that I am aware and that I am that consciousness is a much more significant fact than anything I can glean from what I am conscious of. I hope that answers your question. Ivan. Sophie, hello GP, good to be here in Satsang. Love, Sophie in England. Hi, Sophie. David and Elaine. As consciousness, we are not the body, but a body is present. So, on awakening, are illnesses or conditions associated with the body likely to continue, although held in awareness, or lessen and diminish? That's a very, very significant question. All of the illnesses and conditions and limitations of the body that were a direct result of the identification with the separate self, those disappear because there is no separate self anymore. Not necessarily instantaneously, but they eventually do disappear. But there are all sorts of things that are going on in this process that we call the body. The body is a functioning of life. It's a functioning of nature. What you call your body is not your body at all. It is the functioning of the totality. Every thought, every feeling, and every sensation is not personal. It is a cosmic event. Trace any thought back to its origin, and what will you find? Emptiness. We think, oh, I had that thought, I made that thought, I had a creative idea. Well, that's relatively true. You had a creative idea. You had a thought. That is, within this consciousness, a thought appeared. Right? That simply because of our identification with the separate self, we then see it as my thought, my private thought, and my, a problematic thought, my problem thought, my problem recurring pattern of thoughts, right? Those are all a personal sense of the self, grabbing on to what in fact is a cosmic event, simply an act of life. You see, life is not a bunch of little things. Life is a single functioning thing. Just like the body. Nobody really cares about their stomach or the pancreas, except maybe when it hurts, right? I don't think of myself as being a collection of organs. I see this body as a single functioning whole, right? But simply because of our narrow view of things, we do not see us all as a cell in this single functioning whole of enormous immensity. This body is that. Now that's not consciousness. Some people say, well, I'm this cell in the whole. I'm a part of the whole. I'm a part of the universe and like that. And that's true of the body. It's not true of you. So you can eradicate much of the various kinds of illnesses and limitations that the body is prone to. But two things happen. Number one is that you see that the natural unfoldment and flow of life, even what you might call karma, has to fulfill itself. That momentum just keeps going. You also see that it's not you. That is simply this functioning that you call life. So whatever it happens, even if an illness does remain, and for many it did, it no longer creates suffering. You see pictures of Ramana Maharshi. He's always kind of bent to the side. That's because he had psoriasis. That's the head. I can't remember exactly. Scoliosis or something like that. From the time when he was 16, and he was, completely blissed out when he had his enormous awakening, and he sat for 2 years, didn't move. And his skin was literally being eaten away. And people found him or were feeding him, and they eventually brought him back. And for another 5 years, he didn't even talk. But his body was bent because of all that, and it never changed. And he was one of the greatest sages of all time. Nisargadatta, ran before his enlightenment. He ran a smoke shop. He made beaties, little cigarettes, and he chain smoked his whole life, and he died of throat cancer. After his awakening, he says, "My body likes to have it. What do I care?" See, there was no identification any longer with the body. The body was just seen as life functioning, not a personal possession, not a personal problem. And so all of the functioning of the body became fine. Just became, this is the way life is unfolding at this moment. It's not my problem. So I leave it to fulfill its own destiny. Matter of fact, those are the words Nisargadatta used. He said, I leave my human life to fulfill its destiny. I remain as I am. And so many things will fall away, but not necessarily all of them. Right? The point is that it no longer matters to you if they're there or not. So I hope that answers the question. The thing I always try to bring people back to is that to really see that you're not the body, you can then begin to see the body for what it really is, the functioning of life within consciousness. And it is only the sense of being a separate self that has some kind of preference as to how that consciousness should unfold, how that life should go. Awareness is completely open and spacious and has no preference whatsoever for what outcome happens. It's not interested in its ROI. This is this is the way it goes. Whatever happens is fine. And the wonder of that is that we find that the natural order of the unfoldment of life within consciousness is benevolent, it's harmonious, it's beautiful, it's perfect, it's fascinating, it's mysterious, it's wondrous, because there's no longer anybody there arguing for it to be something different. I hope that answers it for you, David and Elaine. It's a great question. Great question. Ursula, hi. Ursula from Madeira Island, Portugal. Hi, Ursula. Good to see you. Werner, my man. Hi, GP. Good to see you. Good to see you too. Ducks. Hi, GP. Do you dream when you sleep in the non-dual state? Dreams come and go, of course. Yeah. Dreams come and go. There's simply an awareness there. You know, there's the experience of the awakened one is absolutely no different than the experience of anyone else. There's absolutely no difference whatsoever. What isn't there is the sense of being a person with an argument with what is happening or not. The sense of there being some kind of problem isn't there. There's no sense of there being, the non-dual state is simply the absence of a private, personal view of things. Does that make sense? It's not a different experience than anybody has. There's no problem with the world. The problem is that we think the world is something different than it is, and so we experience our thoughts about the world and not actually the world. And so the awakening simply means there's no more entertaining of a provincial view of things, of a narrow interpretation of things. There's the direct experience of everything as it is. And of course, it is more vivid, it's more alive, it's more vital, it's more interesting, right? Because it's not narrow, it's not small. But everything happens just the same, right? They burp, they sneeze. The sage experiences everything else. The sage can get the flu, right? There's no the, there's no there's no difference to the experience itself. It's just that the experience doesn't have any meaning other than what it is. It's a direct experience of what's present. So dreaming is there, deep sleep is there, the waking state is there, and everything is there. Love, grief, joy, misery, just no suffering. Because there's no sufferer there with an idea that things should be different than they are. And if there's no idea that things should be different than they are, there's no possibility to suffer. Because there's no argument with what's happening. And the essence of the argument with what is happening, that it should be different, the essence of that is the simple, single belief that I am a separate individual, that I am this body. So right at the beginning, I invited you to question that, to say, consciousness is obviously much more significant than the body. And if the body exists, its only purpose to exist then, if consciousness is derived from the body, then the only purpose of the body was to create consciousness and a self-conscious awareness, because it's the highest achievement life has made, self-aware consciousness. Therefore, that's the whole point of it. And just kind of examining each one of the organs and what it does, without looking at it in terms of the context of the ultimate purpose of it, which would be to create consciousness, to me is absurd. The whole thing is backwards. Consciousness is relegated to this side thing. Well, isn't that interesting? When in fact, wait a minute, everything happens there. Even all the studies and every little organ that gets examined is being examined by consciousness. Which means consciousness is far more significant and needs to be studied much more than anything else. And of course, you're in the vantage place. You're in the best place to study it because you're it. Then you can look at, well, did consciousness... You can explore all the avenues of consciousness and you can find nothing outside of consciousness. And you can then begin to explore and examine and experiment to see, well, wait a minute. Everything I know about the body is being experienced through consciousness. The idea that the body exists separate from consciousness, is that provable? Is that verifiable? No, it's not. The only way you could verify that the body existed separate from consciousness is to step outside of consciousness and see consciousness conscious of the body and go, oh, there they are, there too. But you obviously can't do that. You see that the entire range of experience is nothing but consciousness. At that point, you see that the idea that the body produced the consciousness is an assumption that everybody has believed. But when I look at my actual experience, I say, I can't buy it. You can offer me absolutely no proof. All I have is the proof of conscious things appearing and disappearing in consciousness. The world, the world in which all these things exist and pop into my consciousness and go out of my consciousness, I cannot substantiate it. I can substantiate consciousness. So to me, the evidence for consciousness only as the true model of existence is, the evidence is overwhelming. And the evidence of a material universe is, there's none. There's absolutely none. It is simply a belief. The Dalai Lama said it beautifully. He said, matter is a metaphysical assumption, not a scientific fact. So, let's see, what did I answer that? So, that's the exploration one. I want you to explore. You are experiencing the non-dual state all the time. Your mind has simply called it dualistic, materialistic, right? These are all thoughts projected upon your actual experience. Your actual experience is non-dual. And the only thing that separates the sage from the unenlightened is they believe those thoughts. That's it. There's absolutely no difference, except in the belief in the external existence of anything. That's the only difference. But in fact, it's just a belief, right? So in reality, there is no difference. The reality is there's absolutely no difference between the unenlightened and the enlightened. There's just this thought. Ramana Maharshi even once said, the only reason you're not enlightened is because you don't think you're enlightened. See, the truth is the truth, whether we believe it or not. We're not going to get enlightenment. You're going to realize. It's self-realization. You're going to realize who the self actually is. That consciousness is what you are, and consciousness is all there is. So, hope that answered for you, ducks. Chris Skills, hello GP, good to see you again. There isn't any such thing as an external world. Consciousness creates everything, am I right? Everything is a projection. There isn't really nothing, only consciousness. Chris, again, consciousness creates reality. Is this so? Yes. The short answer is yes, there is no external world. In fact, it's the second of the bodhisattva practices that Buddha gives in the Localization Sutra. It's in becoming a no, that was the first one. No, perceiving the non-existence of external existence, and the only way you can do that is to first see that you are consciousness, and that consciousness permeates everything, and it's the only thing you actually experience. Right? Nothing you experience, you can't experience anything except through consciousness. Correct? That's self-evident. Right? So that means that all I have to work with is my experience of being consciousness. Now, the things that come and go in consciousness, the things that are created, and I'm going off on this because I want to. It's a fine point, but I want you to get it. If I imagine something in my mind, I can see it very vividly, right? You know, when we dream, it's even more vivid. It's tactile. It's audible. It's very real, right? Or a virtual reality kind of thing. But I haven't really created anything, have I? There's no thing that has been made. There's only a form. It has character and meaning or whatever it is, right? But no thing has actually been created. The universe is like that. It is the self-awareness of awareness, completely contained within awareness and consciousness, and is made of consciousness. So it's not a thing. It is not consciousness manifesting a thing. Consciousness does some magic and makes something happen. This only exists within consciousness. So it too, everything you experience is consciousness. Which actually answers the question about, other consciousnesses and other awarenesses. No. Some would say everything has consciousness, and I say no. Nothing has consciousness. Consciousness has everything. Everything appears in and is made of this conscious beingness. So the thing that gets created is only an image. It's not a thing at all. It has no independent existence. You have a dream at night, be very vivid and very full, and all sorts of very interesting, even fun things are happening, but none of it actually exists, right? Buddha would say it both exists and does not exist. It has no objective external existence. Everything is happening within the theater of consciousness. So there is no external world. There is no external world. It's not that consciousness has made a world. It's not like, God created the heaven and earth in 7 days. It is completely consciousness pondering its own nature. It is completely an internal experience. There is no external world. But I want you to not take my word for that. I want you to explore it for yourself. And if you do, you'll find, no matter how convinced or convincing people are, no matter how vehemently they insist that the world exists external to our perceptions, I say over and over again, there's absolutely no verification of it. There's no way you can prove that to be the case. You cannot say it's so. And then ponder, what can I see? Consciousness everywhere. Everything coming and going within consciousness, which means the entire universe, as we perceive it, is simply an idea in the heart of God. I guess that's the only way you could put it. Does that help, Chris? So what consciousness creates reality? It's really important. Consciousness is reality. What is created isn't really created. It's consciousness pondering its own nature. So it's not creating a reality. It is the reality. It is what is. It is the being, which gives everything else reflects the being. It doesn't become something. It's simply reflecting the isness, the reality of the consciousness that is viewing it. The viewing of it, the creation of it, the experience of it, the knowing of it are all one simultaneous event. The knowing of a thing and the thing are one. Knowing is not a thing that then is perceived and known by consciousness. Consciousness knowing it is the totality of its existence. But it does not have an existence as a thing. It only has an existence as consciousness. Very subtle, but thank you for asking that question. It's really deep. I mean, we're pretty much all the way down the rabbit hole today. I like it. Son Apollo says, hi from London. Hello, son. May Tov Amli, consciousness equals energy? No. Consciousness, people like to think of it as energy. The universe is nothing but energy, which gets us closer. We see that there's something very essential, of which all of these things are an appearance, right? My body is an appearance of a collection of cells, a cluster of cells doing a bunch of things. Each one of those cells is a cluster of molecules. Each one of the molecules is a cluster of atoms. Each one of the atoms a cluster of subatomic particles, quantum, down, 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 down. And so there's this idea of just kind of a field of energy, and things kind of energy congealing or condensing and then evaporating again, things coming into existence, going out of existence. But all of that is happening in consciousness. So make energy equals consciousness. It makes consciousness divisible. It makes it dependent on something else. It makes it secondary. Right? What came first? Of course, this is the big question science has been trying to answer forever. What came first? What is here? Right? Because everything we see is an appearance of something smaller, right? And keep going down. Well, what is actually here? We have to get to something that is not an appearance of something else. You can't have just this infinite recursion of something being an appearance of something being an appearance of. There's got to be something, right? There's got to be something that is not an appearance of something else, that is not relative to something else. That something is consciousness. It's rejected by the materialistic view. They think consciousness is way the heck up here, one of the appearances in that line. But there's something that is, and not an appearance of something else. Consciousness equals energy, then consciousness, you could say consciousness equals energy if you don't see it as being, if you don't see it as being a thing. That's the only way to put it. Energy is a very subtle thing. It's an object of mind. Consciousness is not an object of mind. Mind is an object in consciousness. Consciousness has no discernible attributes. It has no characteristics. It is totally empty of any kind of definition. So it's not knowable in our sense. We can say, oh, energy, that's consciousness. No. Consciousness is simply that which is aware. That fundamental thing that is not the appearance of something else. It is the awareness itself. And it's so simple, because consciousness is simply what's hearing my words right now. That's conscious, right? That's consciousness. So you are, and that's you, isn't it? Right? You're hearing my words. Consciousness is hearing my words. I am consciousness. Because clearly I'm hearing. Right? So now, what is that? And that's why I want you to get really curious and excited. So wait, what is that? It's remarkable. Even the most subtle of the experiments that were done at CERN, and they discovered the Higgs boson, the most subtle experiments, even the detection of the most subtle energy, the fellows that won the Nobel Prize for detecting the background noise of the universe, right? This little hum going on in the background, incredibly subtle, but it was all perceived by consciousness, which is obviously more subtle. No matter what it is that gets discovered, the greatest discoveries, they're all appearing in consciousness. It baffles me why they don't stop and go, wait a minute. Maybe this is the is that is not an appearance of something else. Maybe this is the fundamental. So the only reason I question that is because it's actually kind of a popular New Age kind of thing to say, oh, it's all energy, consciousness, and energy is consciousness, and even people, I've heard the Holy Spirit is the energy of the universe, and all of that self-aware energy and all of that. You can still see that it is an objectification of the mind, right? It's trying to make something that you can grasp as a concept. Consciousness, by definition, must be beyond all concepts. Concepts appear to it and disappear out of it, because a concept does not think itself, right? Concept is not aware of itself. No thought is aware of itself. No experience is aware of itself. They're all appearing to you. The awareness that gives life to any thought, feeling, or sensation is you, consciousness. A sensation without the consciousness to experience it is what? Nothing. There's nothing there. Without consciousness, things simply don't exist. Am I going too fast or too far? I hope not. If I am, I'll slow down. If anybody has questions that are a little bit more subtle, but I'm surely happy to proceed on this track. Um, let's see. Son Apollo says, is it possible to request a specific EFT video? Yes, yes. The best way to do that is to send an email to support@masterheartinstitute.com. I am actually putting together some new things for EFT. I'll be doing a live EFT workshop in Las Vegas. I guess a week from Monday. Yeah, a week from Monday. Because I'm speaking there and I'm going to be doing things. So I'm going to be doing an EFT workshop there. So if you happen to be in Las Vegas, and I didn't see anybody say to Las Vegas, so I don't think I'm going to be able to get it recorded. But I will be making a whole package of EFT things. But by all means, I always love to hear what people want. I probably made a dozen videos based on what people say. Could you please do an EFT video on this subject? So by all means, I'm happy to do that. Alan Eggleston, my experience right now, if I investigated, is that I am experiencing the person, not the other way around. That seems most valid presently. And I would totally agree, right? I mean, you're just looking at your own experience, and all the qualities I know of as the person are all being perceived by me, including that impulse, almost a compulsion to identify with that person. Oh, I am that. But that too is just a thought. It's just an idea. That it is just it's just another activity in consciousness that says I am this finite person. You look at it very closely and you say, well, it's just a thought. Is it true? No, because obviously all of the qualities I know of as the person, I am perceiving them. So I'm clearly not that. Well, then what am I? What is it that's perceiving it? The best word I have is consciousness. But what does that really mean? Well, oh, that's me. I. That's the best word for it. It's myself. Whatever that is. And I can't really say what it is because every time I have an idea about what it is, it's just an idea that's appearing to it. Can I even know myself in those terms? Can I know myself as an object? No, because I'm always the one knowing the object. So what am I then? Nothing in particular. Formless. Anytime I have a form, it's something I perceive. The form and what's not the form. All of being perceived by consciousness. Consciousness obviously has no limits. It has no shape. It has no form. It is not bound by anything. Only my ideas about it tend to bind it, make it seem as if it's localized. I may even experience it as localized. You know, to be awake doesn't mean you can enter other people's minds and hear their thoughts and all of that. The experience is still the same. You know, when you're enlightened, it doesn't mean that now you see the Earth turning on its axis and don't see the sun going across the sky. To the perception of your senses, the sun is still moving and the Earth is motionless. Right? But you're no longer fooled by that. The illusion of that is no longer fooling you. The same thing is true with the enlightened mind. It still experiences the world just like everything else, but it no longer is fooled by the idea that the world exists externally to the conscious experience of it. The knowing of the world and the world are one. And so it's no longer fooled by the misinterpretation, the illusory interpretation of what is being experienced. It's the only difference. Everything else is experienced exactly the same. So you're absolutely right. You are experiencing the person. So now you just keep drilling in. Oh, I'm not the person. Let that sink in so that the idea that your person doesn't fool you anymore. But don't stop there. Keep going. What is the nature of, is my nature? What am I that is aware of the person? I'm not the person. Well, then what am I? And let that just let that sink in until it burns. You have to know. And then you'll find all the ways of knowing that are not objective, but they're a subjective knowing. They're a trusting of your own internal experience. They're a trusting of your own insight, even if it completely contradicts everything that is being normally taught these days. And it does. Oh, excuse me. I take a quick drink here, if y'all don't mind. Please like and share, by the way. I'm always reminded by people to tell me, remind them to like and share. Okay, I just did. I've done my job. Internal inside, I was contemplating this in the subject for many years. What am I really? What a question, right? Yeah. The conclusion I have so far is that consciousness is the only thing that can be existed inside nothingness. Not quite sure I understand that last part, internal inside. Consciousness is the only thing that consciousness is the only thing that can actually be. Maybe a Big Bang happened, maybe it didn't. All we know is what's been experienced in consciousness. The whole idea of the Big Bang and all of the evidence and all of the conclusions and all the interpretation of experience that has said there was a Big Bang. All of that's happened within consciousness. If it did happen 13 billion years ago, nobody was there, there to know. Of course, that's the assumption, that it happened and nobody was there to know it, but it happened anyway. And yet that entire line of reasoning is all taking place within consciousness. Again, it's always the medium. What can I say? What can I say? It's the only thing that it's not only the only thing that is experiencing, it's because obviously if it's not conscious, it's not experiencing anything. It's the only thing that can be experienced. Because everything is some kind of a vibration in consciousness, right? It's the only thing that's actually ever experienced. And so we have all sorts of ideas of what out there, this thing that's created all this stuff that's causing me to have this experience, but the experience itself is never anything other than consciousness. So the theories of what is being experienced, to me, are just they're unprovable assumptions. What's being experienced? Consciousness is being experienced. Simple. Not only is it doing the experiencing, it's what's being experienced. If we think of consciousness, though, as just kind of this empty blankness, we will have limited it. It doesn't have to be that. I'm obviously not experiencing all sorts of things right now in consciousness that are made of consciousness. It's like the screen on your computer, right? You're seeing, my face and my shirt and the wall behind me. You're actually seeing the entire picture, and I'm moving and it's moving on the screen. You could flip over to Netflix and have a completely different thing going on. There could be a war or a love scene or a flood, anything going on, right? You're looking at the screen, aren't you? The picture and the screen are one. The screen is the picture is the screen. You can't separate the two of them. So we're so absorbed in the image that we're seeing, the interesting movie, that we forget that we're looking at the screen until it goes blank, and suddenly, oh, The screen is blank. We think of the screen as being just blank with nothing on it, but it's just as much the screen when there's all sorts of activity going on as it is the screen when it's absolutely blank and there's nothing lit up whatsoever. What we experience is the nature of the screen itself. What we are experiencing as the universe is the nature of consciousness itself. Is that helpful? I don't know if that answered your question or not, but I'm sure. Oh, wait. She continues on. The infinite can only exist if awareness is attached to it. So nothingness, by definition, is impossible, and at the same time, infinite, so difficult to explain with words. Yes, it is difficult to explain with words, but you do have it. Nothingness can only exist if awareness is attached to it. Yes, even nothingness is just a thought, isn't it? A thought appearing in consciousness. You can't have nothingness. You can't really have nothing, right? I mean, really void nothing. You cannot have it. Right? It too is simply an appearance within awareness. Awareness is this indivisible not thing, right? That's the only way you can express it. So there's no nothingness, there's no somethingness. There's only consciousness. Wow. David says, "Hi GP, since you touched on the idea of solipsism, could you explain why most people hate this concept? I feel there must be something to it, since it invokes such a negative emotion in people." Well, a solipsism is a form of madness, right? It's psychopathic narcissism, the idea that only I exist. When you take a non-dual concept of the unity, the singularity of consciousness, and that I am consciousness and there's nothing other than consciousness, if you put that in the hands of the egoic mind or the separate self, it will make itself, this finite person, the only thing that exists. In order to really get to the root of it, you have to see consciousness as being universal, not an individual possession. Therefore, the person appears in consciousness and not the other way around. But somebody's identified with the person, an idea like this, if it is not correctly explained to them or not correctly received, will turn into a solipsism, which is insanity. It makes for extreme sociopathy, right, and psychopathy, where the only thing that is me. That's all there is to it. If somebody would say something like that to a Zen master, they get the stick upside their head. Oh, was that you? Boom. Right? It is. Yes, it is it's a silly idea. But it's the kind of thing that happens. Well, silly ideas can be very well believed. Just look around the world. It's the kind of thing that can happen when somebody very identified with the egoic mind grabs a hold of some kind of New Age or non-dual thought, not New Age, non-dual idea, and interprets it from the point of view of the separate self. You get really, really inane and stupid ideas like solipsism, and other kinds of things as well. The gurus that have sex with their followers, right? That's another species of it. Well, none of this matters. All of it is part of the divine plan, and so my behavior doesn't matter. I know plenty. There's plenty of them. There's plenty of them out there. There's a whole lineage of them, actually. I won't go into the details of it, but one guy was actually a student of Nisargadatta, kind of went off in that direction, and he had several people that were his students who went off in that direction. So it becomes kind of an amorality. That is not Buddhism, that is not Advaita Vedanta, and it is certainly not Zen. And that is that kind of behavior does not arise out of the awakened mind. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Ava, namaste, GP, and everybody. So late today. It's okay. I actually got to talk to Ava. She was on the open call I did for everybody on my mailing list. Chris says, any info, GP, on what to do after enlightenment? LOL, I feel so strange right now. The consciousness creates everything model really hit me. Um, yes, I have lots of ideas. I even did a whole class on it called From Delusion to Awakening. The very same practice that that brought you to the realization, just keep continuing it. The the state of openness. You're going to know, just because you got the model, it's hit you hard. You realize, oh my God, there's nothing but consciousness. It doesn't mean that the reactive patterns and the programmed responses and conditioning in the nervous system are going to instantaneously stop. They're not. They're going to keep coming. But now you can see them for what they actually are. They're not a person. They're not a personal possession. They're not a personal problem. They're simply the residual momentum of your identification with the person. Remember, you identified with the person for so long, that image is locked into the nervous system. It is actually there, and the nervous system is still kind of spinning on the assumption that you are that separate self. So you're going to find reactions are going to come up. The key is to not go back into the person by saying, oh my God, I didn't get it. Oh, I've got to do another retreat. Oh geez, 1,000 more satsangs and maybe I'll get it. Don't go there. Don't go there. Just see what's happening. This is the residual energy of the nervous system, which still thinks that the person that I believed myself to be for a long time is still what I am. If you do that, the energy will begin to dissipate very, very, very quickly. I call it the post-awakening sadhana. It's how you let the whole energy of the realization colonize the rest of the system. It goes from just realization, the opening of the realization of your true nature. It goes into feeling it, right? Which it seems to me that that's what's happening as you begin to actually feel it, and then that will permeate the whole system until you're living it. Your life and it are the same. Truth and you are one and the same, and which is always the case. But then it becomes the personal realization of it. You disappear, and the only thing left is truth. There's no more you. There's only truth. The sincere prayer of the monk: God, replace me with you. It is the final eradication of all the remaining illusion of who you thought you were. And so just really cherish it like the most wonderful thing in the world has happened to you, because it has. Really cherish it and let it, and it will sink in. And don't think it's something you have to do. Right? Oh my God, I had this. How do I hold on to it? Big mistake. Don't do that. Be with it, love it, embrace it, go with it more, see where it goes, see if there's any end to it. Start exploring it. If for some reason suddenly you feel like the sky has crashed in on you, and for the life of you cannot hold on to anything, you can't think a clear thought, there's no clarity left at all, which could happen, you just go, there it is. It's exactly the same thing. It's the same identification. I am still the consciousness that is aware of that. And I am that. The same consciousness perceives the precise, infinite clarity and bliss that comes with it. It also perceives complete confusion and chaos and misery. The same consciousness perceives both. So even the wonderful elation or the feeling of darkness are both just phenomena appearing in front of who I actually am. Let the I stay there. as the one seeing, and not be the least bit drawn in to what is being seen. That, and that will solidify it. The person has no place to hide then. The sense of a separate self has no place to hide then, because it can't breathe in the rarefied atmosphere of pure consciousness. It's like you're up at 50,000 feet. Nothing can breathe up there except you. Haron, am I just a passive observer of my life? If that is so, how could knowing that make any difference to conditioning? The latter suggests that the nervous system is aware of awareness, which seems weird. No, the nervous system isn't aware of anything, right? I mean, the theory for most people is that the nervous system is consciousness, that it's a physical structure. But the consciousness-only model is, no, it's not aware of anything. I'm aware of it. It's not aware of me. My hand doesn't know me. I know my hand. No thought, I think, knows me. I know it. So it's always that. When you ask the question, am I just a passive observer of life, I have to ask you, who are you referring to when you say I? If you're referring to the sense of being a person and doing your life and doing the things you do in life, the idea of just becoming a passive bystander to that is not only inaccurate, it's unhealthy. Right? Awareness is infinitely aware. It is open. It is spacious. It has no preference for outcome. It has no preconceived notions. None of that. It is simply the space in which everything is being perceived. So to try to make a person more passive or more aggressive is a mistake, and will actually hurt you. When I teach like allowing and that sort of thing, the point is to not become passive about life and just sit there and wait for anything to happen. To become allowing and open means that you allow yourself to feel everything you're feeling. You allow yourself to do everything that needs to be done, right? So sometimes it's appropriate to be very assertive, even aggressive at times. Sometimes you have to go and ask for what you want. Sometimes you have to ask for that date. Sometimes you have to ask for the raise. Sometimes you have to say, hey, I could really do great in this job. I think you should hire me. Right? Sometimes you have to do that. Right? You allow that to happen. So it's not passive, it's wise. It's not trying to force something to happen, but it's not trying to step away from it. It's neither attachment nor aversion. It is allowing every aspect of life to be fully accessible to you. Does that make sense? So the allowing, that yoga of allowing that I talk about, it is simply not taking such a strong position that you exclude other positions. It's an openness to seeing a better way. It's an openness to seeing through the illusion. It's an openness to self-acceptance, so that you're not rejecting parts of yourself, a part that you very well may need, a week from now, right? The whole point of that opening of that inner spaciousness is that if we're not stuck in identification with a particular person, there's an infinite number of resources that are available to us that aren't available to us if I'm this, I'm just this, and I'm not that. So that is not available to me now. But if I step into every position, every experience, every moment, every situation, I'm open. I'm not passive in that I'm just waiting for stuff to hope. I'm open. I have no agenda. I'm not trying to force anything onto the situation. I'm really present. And that allows me to be as passive or as laid back as the moment requires, or as absolutely upfront and in your face as the moment requires. There's nothing stopping me from being perfectly adaptive to the environment as it's happening. That's the gift of awakening. It is not a passive thing. It it is real presence. So you'll see a sage, read someone the riot act, I got some glaring looks from Muji, right? And another time, one whole night he didn't look at me at all. And the one time I actually had to hand him something where he looked at me, it was just coldness. It stung, but then I went, no, 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 no. He's seeing something in me that I'm holding on to, and he's seeing it, and that's how he's communicating. And he communicated perfectly, and eventually I dropped it. I saw through. Took a while, but I saw through. I saw what he saw, and eventually it got purged from the system. But he was not nice about it. And I've also seen him to say, "Hey, sit down. You're done. You've blown your opportunity." So, not a lot, right? But you are open and free to be whatever you need to be in the moment that the moment needs. That is true freedom. You're not stuck anywhere. You are no one in particular. And because you are no one in particular, you are that infinite consciousness. You can be anything at any time. So forms are constantly coming and going, but the forms are not, I think I'm going to be this now. The forms are naturally coming and going because that's the nature of consciousness, to constantly be molding itself to the environment that it itself has generated. It's beautiful. It's just beautiful. Does that answer it for you, Haroon? Hope so. Son Apollo, the point you touched on about a 3D movie made me laugh. I can imagine everyone else just watching the movie at the cinema and GP exploring the nature of reality itself. Well, it's useful because virtual reality and even before virtual reality, when the first person games it came out, which were major step forward, high definition TVs and the like. They reveal to us how easily our perceptions can fool us. I went to Disneyland a long, long time ago, or Disney World, down in Orlando, a long, long time ago when my kids were young, and went into, there was one ride. It wasn't really a ride. It was a 360-degree movie. So they had shot scenes with like, I think there were like 18 cameras. So they had 18 screens around. So you were completely immersed in this scene. And they were having car races and the like. And of course, you're just standing there looking at a movie, but they actually had rails for you to hold on to. And you needed them. Because I was standing there, it was like, you hold on, because the perceptions were so fooled that even though you were standing there, quite safe, quite upright, you didn't need anything to support you, the perceptions that you were having were such that your mind and your nervous system was seeing something completely different, imagining something completely different. It's such a beautiful metaphor for what this all is, where you are experiencing your belief about the world and not the world. When you drop the belief, it's what's called awakening. And then you see the world as it is, not through the filter of your beliefs. You're seeing it directly, as it actually is. And so the idea of a 3D movie and your dreams at night or virtual reality show you how easy it is to create a sense of it being a reality when it isn't. And that's where I have to bring you back to the only thing that cannot be an illusion, and that is your actual experience of it. The consciousness of whatever's being experienced. The experience itself can be completely disoriented, completely wrong, right? Right now, you may not be watching YouTube at all. You could be in a nut house somewhere yelling at a wall. Right? You'd be sound asleep on another planet, right? Dreaming you're an Earth person watching YouTube. There's no way in the world you can actually know, right? But there's one thing you cannot be fooled about, and that is you are conscious of the experience. Boom. That's where reality must lie. That is not an illusion. I can't be having an illusion about existence. I mean, nothing, no devil, no super being, no clever guy from the Q continuum could possibly convince me that I existed if I don't. That existence is absolutely rock solid. And that existence is conscious. You are conscious of everything else. The consciousness itself, it is doubtable, indubitable. Robert Hill, is the Garden of Eden non-duality and the apple represents duality? And we have to go through these incarnations so we return to formlessness? Well, yes. The Garden of Eden represents pure, undifferentiated consciousness, pure innocence. But Adam and Eve didn't know anything, right? They had no sense of even their own existence, right? God representing the ultimate state of all existence, the pure consciousness. They ate of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which is, of course, they ate of the fruit of duality, which represents, that moment was what is called the fall, but that corresponds to the sense that each one of us has. It's a metaphor for the experience that every single one of us has as a child when out of the sense of this undifferentiated consciousness, the baby, the infant, my hand, I don't know, it's just experience. There's no me, there's no you. Everything is just this sea of experience. And then something happens, some series of events in which there's a sense of there's a me and another. And it is the first trauma, it's the fall. When that happens in us, what we feel is a fear of lack and a fear of death. We feel fear. And because of the nature of the child, that it must believe that its parents are all powerful, otherwise it's dead, right? Because it can't do anything for itself. The other thing that it feels is that it's all my fault. This has happened, and it's my fault. So you get fear and you get shame, which are exactly the characteristics that they put into the characters of Adam and Eve, because God's going, Adam, where are you? I mean, as if he didn't know it's God, right? And Adam says, we were hiding. He says, why were you hiding? We were afraid. We were naked and we were ashamed. Fear and shame from tasting the duality. But you're absolutely right. It has to happen. They were never meant to stay there. And from that moment on, now, returning to formlessness, you are formless. The eating of the fruit of the tree of good and evil, the eating of the fruit of duality, isn't a problem. It completes the picture. If it's just non-dual, if it's just the pure undifferentiated consciousness, then it's no different than an animal or an infant. Right? We have to partake of the duality, and then absorb that duality back into the singularity of consciousness, which is neither dual nor non-dual. It transcends both. And that's the real point. It is not just a return to that innocence. It is the awakening to wisdom that is neither dual nor non-dual. It is neither exists nor does not exist. It is transcendent of all opposites and all definitions. It is beyond conception. You cannot know it, but you are it. So you don't return to formlessness. You realize the formlessness, and you realize in the formlessness your own true nature. And then the world of duality melts. It doesn't lose the distinctions between things, but the unity of the things is now seen. It is not undifferentiated. It's differentiated but unified. Does that make sense for you? Robert? Robert Hill. Oops. Hi, by the way. Much love. Hi, Robert. Much love to you. Rosario says, thank you, GP, for your love, sharing your wisdom with all of us. Oh, you're more than welcome. Werner, consciousness has made everything. I am consciousness. How far can I alter what I experience in my reality? The one who wants to alter the experience is the person. Consciousness has absolutely no interest in altering anything. What's there to alter? Right? Think about it. Really trace that back. Say, can I alter what I experience in my reality? Who's that I? Find out who that I is. And then tell me how much that matters. Tell me if consciousness actually cares about altering anything. Okay? What is it that would want to alter anything? Some position has to be taken that says, I don't like this, I'd rather have that. Explore that. That's the open door. There's an attachment and an aversion. I don't like this, I want this. I want to alter it to this. That's an attachment to this and an aversion to that. In order for that to be there, there has to be an identification with a person who has preferences. But preferences are simply thoughts and feelings that are perceived by consciousness. They come and they go. They change over time. Consciousness perceives them coming and going, perceives them changing over time. Does the consciousness that you are, have a desire for things to be different than they are? It's subtle. This is where you get down to the rubber meeting the road. And then you find, who is it that doesn't like this, that wants it to be different? When you explore that, you find the who is very easy to identify. There's a thought. There's just a thought that says, I want this to be that. Oh, wait a minute. I want this. I can find the want. I can see the desire for that. Who's this I? Where's this I? When you look, you will find you can't find that I. You can find the thought. I want this, not that. You can find that thought, but you cannot find the I that wants it. Suddenly now it's just a thought appearing in consciousness, but the I it's referring to doesn't exist. Is that clear, Werner? Philip says, show. Where'd he go? Sub to PewDiePie. Okay. No idea what that is. Bogdan says, hi from Romania. A causal exist? Does cause exist? Is that what you mean, Bogdan? I'm not quite sure. Causal exist? Oh, brother. Lots and... are you subbed to PewDiePie? I have no idea what that is. So, let's see. So, hi Bogdan. I'm not sure what your question is. A causal exist. A cause exist? Does a cause exist? So, if you can clarify that, please. If consciousness is empty stillness, then is joy a cultivation of mind? So there are no inherent feelings associated with being more awake? No. Joy is experienced as joy, but who's doing the experiencing? The emptiness of consciousness makes it infinite, okay? It makes it, if consciousness wasn't empty, if it was a thing, even if it was a really, really big thing, right, it would be a thing. It would have a limit. right? Something just caught my attention here. The only way for consciousness to be infinite, to be able to produce absolutely any form, to be the infinite potential for absolutely anything, it itself must be empty of any attribute. Because everything has a limit, doesn't it? Right? This microphone has a limit. This shirt has a limit. This face has a limit. Right? It's this face and nothing else. So if consciousness was anything, it would be limited. So the emptiness and the stillness is not the absence of feeling. It is the place from which feeling arises. And when it is seen as such, all your sensations, all your thoughts, and all your feelings now are seen as emerging from consciousness. They lose the identification with being a separate self and therefore become liberated. Thoughts are no longer tied to a separate self. They become creative and open and spacious and extraordinarily powerful. Our feelings become rich and vivid. The joys are real joys. Our griefs are deeply felt. The loss of some because there's no way to get around loss. Things are constantly coming and going, but there's no suffering in it anymore. There's no identification with any of it anymore. So it's not empty in the sense of that it's vacuous or void. It is empty only in that it is not anything in particular. It has no limits on it. It is, if you were something, you couldn't grow. You couldn't develop. You couldn't become something else. You couldn't learn. You couldn't expand. We all want to learn and expand and grow, right? Well, if you were something in particular, you couldn't. You could not get outside of that. Growth beyond it would be impossible. But yet, you know very well in your life, you've grown through many different phases. You've become many different people. You've done things when you were young, you may not even have thought possible. Right? So the container, it says, well, this is all I can be, this is all I can do, is the illusion. The emptiness means there's no container. There's no limits on experience. Right? There's no limits on you. So emptiness is what gives you the capacity to grow and expand, to one form after another without being stuck in any particular form. It's not I get to hear, this is it, this is all I can ever be. Not so. It will constantly unfold to the next and the next and the next because it's appearing directly out of the infinite nature of consciousness. And you are that consciousness that is unbounded, but you are also this form that is manifesting, that is consciousness knowing itself. So it is both the universal and the particular at the same time. Now don't try to give this to your mind, you can't grasp it. It's for the mind, it's got to be one or the other. I'm this or I'm that. Emptiness, nothingness. No, it's not that. Emptiness, it means infinite potential. And allows for infinite potential. The infinite expansion of reality and the universe can only happen because there is the emptiness of consciousness, or shunyata, which in the Sanskrit means pregnant emptiness, rich, overflowing, but the potential for everything. Does that help? Good, no. I have no idea what you're saying, but thank you, it's beautiful. Carrie Brogden, good day from Australia. Good day, Carrie. Hiron says, no, I meant I to refer to awareness. Well, let me go back here, Hiron. Let's see if am I just a passive observer of my life? If that is so, how could knowing that make any difference? From the point of view of awareness, everything is simply happening. It is simply naturally arising. Right? I mean, I like to, We always think of it as an act of creation, as like it's an act of will, rather than simply arising out of one's nature. If you listen to a really good musician that's improvising, he's not creating in a sense. It's not an act of will. There's not a script, there's not a program. Things are spontaneously happening. There's no thought going on. There's no will to create in that sense. And oftentimes the musician, the good improviser, will just be delighted with it because they're seeing it for the first time as well. The same thing is true when I give talks. I have no idea where I'm going to go. Suddenly the subject can really surprise me, and some things come out of my mouth, and I go, "Wow!" I'm hearing them for the very first time. Oops, I completely lost my train of thought. Right. So it's not an act of creation. It's not an act of will. But it's not passive. The universe, to the material scientist, the universe is an expression of the nature of whatever this fundamental particle is that actually is, that everything else is an appearance of, right? The nature of that particle is what gives rise to all of this. If it was different, all of this would be different. So it's not an act of creation. It's not an act of will. There's not a God there that's saying, this is what it's going to be like. Awareness, the nature of awareness is infinite, abundant, expressive self-expressiveness, because it is the self, the only self. But it doesn't have to then express itself like it's some kind of an act to bring something into creation. Its very nature is the creative power that makes the universe. So it's simply its own nature. What you're experiencing in your life is simply the nature of consciousness itself. It is not consciousness doing something. It is consciousness experiencing itself. But again, I have to, when I look at the trend of the questions, don't be asking so much about consciousness and what it is awareness do this and do. You are awareness. You want to answer those questions, go to the source. What's the source? You. Your conscious existence. We don't want to turn this into the mind forming really beautiful non-dual thoughts about conscious awareness, about existence, about reality. We want to be reality, speak as reality, speak as the truth, speak as pure consciousness, and then the answers are there. This is a matter of not coming to know what you are, but to realize what you are. Not an acquiring of knowledge, that's what I am. That's still an object. That is what I am is a visceral, inner, intuitive realization. That's why they refer to awakening as self-realization. I know who I am. So all these words, including consciousness and awareness and the I am and I amness and isness and suchness, all these words are only pointers, pointing you back to become increasingly interested in you, that which is aware of consciousness. That which is aware, which is consciousness. Keep coming back to the place from which you are seeing, because that's where you are, right? You're not on the other side of the lens. You're here. You're the one seeing. So keep coming back there. When the I am returns there consistently, you'll be speaking from that place. And the questions, the need to acquire some kind of external knowledge or concept simply won't be there anymore. You don't need it. There's nothing left to explain, right? I'm not saying don't ask questions, right? I always have to be careful. There's always somebody who goes, "Oh, I just want to ask a question." No, 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 no. I want you to ask questions. Whatever question comes, I want to hear it. But my job is to be turning you constantly back to the place from which the question emerged. Because the reality is that the answer will emerge from that same place. And even if the answer comes out of my mouth, it's actually originating in the same place that the question came out of your mouth. They are both arising out of the same essential source. So that was just my little side note on don't get hung up in concepts and ideas and even spiritual knowledge. Don't get hung up there. Stay with yourself. Stay with in the position you are always in. You are always in the position of the one seeing, right? You never ever leave that position, right? So keep going back there. Because no matter what concept you have, no matter what answer I give you, it's going to be received there. There is where you are. Right? There is where you will find the answer to all your questions. That is, you'll find yourself, which is the answer to all your questions. Carrie says, quick question. Does awareness have value without its manifestations? Well, of course. The manifestations are constantly changing. The awareness is constant. But you cannot separate the two, because the nature of awareness is self-awareness. The knowing and being are all one. So it's infinite value. The value, when we look at the value of something, the value of this microphone is, I don't think it cost me like $60 or something, right? So that's its value. Its market value, $60. It has a lot of more value, personal value, because it's a very easy way for me to get a good quality sound while I do these videos. So now that's another kind of value, right? It's a useful tool to me. I like it, and it's been very, very helpful. So it has value to you too, as well, right? Because you can hear me better than I was just speaking on the little cheap microphone that comes in the iPad or an iPhone. Right? So that's a different kind of value, much more than the $60. So this doesn't really have any inherent value. Somebody else go, oh God, I hate that mic. It has no value to them, right? To see it as the manifestation of awareness gives it infinite value. Infinite value. Because now it's not just this object serving a limited purpose here. It's also fulfilling a purpose within the totality of existence. It is intimately related to me and to you. You're in relationship with it. It is now part of a matrix of beauty, a matrix of wisdom. It is now the conduit for the expression of wisdom as much as this body is, right? That is making little lip noises that allows us to communicate meaning over vast distances. This is my body, isn't it? So it's got a whole lot more value than just a mic on a stand. This is my body. This is the body that is communicating to you. It is an extension of my lips and tongues and tongue and cheeks and teeth. So when you really see it within the context of the whole, and that it happens to be here in this moment at this time, so we can do this, you see that its value is infinite. When you see things as the manifestation of awareness, they take on infinite value, not no value. Infinite value. Okay. Let's see. Oh boy, almost on 2 hours. Hey, great. 19, 19 likes. I don't know how many shares. Janet from Vegas. Hi, Janet. Glad you could join us. I hope you're going to be at the EFT event on next Monday. Not this Monday, but the following Monday, and maybe even I think Tracy, my manager, gave you tickets. If not, you will. Very good. Um, Rosario, oh, much love. Consciousness made everything. So, yeah, I really want you to see that the mind cannot grasp the true significance of infinite value. It cannot grasp the true significance of emptiness. It doesn't get it. Doesn't know what it means, right? Because it can only see the nothingness. Remember, the mind is nothing but our ability to manipulate symbols, compare, contrast. That's all it is. So it's useful. It describes one thing in terms of another. You know, we have ideas and concepts. It's really great. If I put them in the right order, I can convey something to you and point you to a place that's actually uh, beyond words, right? Um, but the concepts can't answer can't can't really grasp the depth and the infinitude of of, uh, of what emptiness really means. It simply means empty of a fixed form, which means all forms are possible to it. Everything is possible to it. And the only thing that puts limits on any of us, because we are that consciousness, is the beliefs that are held. The belief is what you experience as a limitation. There are no limitations. They don't exist, except as a belief in the mind. And if they are believed into existence. They are experienced as such. You experience, when those beliefs are shattered, when they're dissolved, when they're seen to be just a belief, the walls of the mind come down. And as it says in the Heart Sutra, you live without fear. Paul's Joseph. How can we be conscious of an illusion? Well, you are, aren't you? Right? When we're conscious of the illusion that the plane going off into the distance is not really getting smaller. The people aren't being crushed inside. That it is not the sun that is moving around the earth. We're conscious of those, and they're illusions. Illusions are very much part of the whole thing as well. It's only when we think the illusion is reality that we get in trouble. That's the only problem. Believing the illusion to be something other than illusion. Believing anything to be other than what it is where we get into trouble. So the very fact that you are conscious of an illusion shows that's how you can be conscious of an illusion. We can perhaps be conscious of being conscious, yes, yes, indeed, which is the most refined and the deepest potential of consciousness, its own self-awareness, to be conscious of being conscious. And then in that space, conscious of being conscious, and you realize the only thing that can be conscious of being conscious is consciousness. Only awareness is aware, only consciousness is conscious. So nothing else is conscious. So nothing else exists outside of consciousness, and I am that consciousness. Clearly, you are that consciousness. So it is true that you're conscious of being consciousness. This may let go of the hold. This may let go of the hold of the illusion. Seeing, don't make this a bigger deal than it actually is. Seeing an illusion as an illusion, that's it. You're done. You're not fooled again. Nobody here is fooled by the sun going across the sky. Nobody that I know here. That's all it is. It's simply an illusion. Right? Once it's an illusion, nothing has to change. You see that it is an illusion, but you are now wise. You know what it actually means. You now know how to take the very same evidence that had the illusion projected on it and interpret it correctly, seeing it from the right perspective. The illusion is gone. Right? And that's perfectly natural. That's exactly how it works. And the depth of that is to become conscious of being conscious can dispel all of the illusions of interpreting experience from the imagined existence of a separate self. That imagined existence of the separate self caused us to interpret our experience as if it was external, as if there was a world, as if I was limited, and it's an illusion. Without that filter of the separate self, we now see the world through the eyes of the awakened one. And the illusion is gone. Just like the sun passing across the sky, that illusion is gone. The illusion of the earth sitting still and the sun moving is gone. The illusion of everything around me being a result of and happening to a separate self is gone. And now it is simply the pure experience of existence itself. Okay. David Smith. Okay, one more. One more. GP, what do you think about the miraculous stories written about the autobiography of a yogi? Or if you haven't read the book, the stories about Vivekananda or Ramakrishna, Papaji. For example, Papaji claimed that Ramana Maharshi materialized in a pub and told him to visit a guru in some remote place himself. How to explain this? Actually, he didn't mean to write materialized. Papaji said that someone who looked like Ramana told him to visit Ramana. He even accused Rama of being a fake who promotes himself. That's great. Yes, I know that story. I also know some of the stories in Autobiography of a Yoga. There's another one, My Life with the Himalayan Masters. There's all sorts of stories about miraculous things. The Bible is full of miraculous events. A miracle simply means something happened that's so far out of our preconceived notion as to how things work that we say it's a miracle, right? There's no such thing as a miracle. There's simply a complete misunderstanding of the nature of the laws that are governing it. And the law governing everything is that there are no limits. Okay, so we say this is a miracle. I waved my hand and materialized vibhuti, ash or something like that. It's only a miracle because we think there's some limits. If you take away the limits, it's not a miracle. Then the miracle, the real miracle, is existence itself. The absolute awe and wonder of infinite, illimitable existence. That's miraculous enough to keep you in awe for eternity. Because it never stops unfolding. My God, there's no end to it. Yep, there's no end to it. So miraculous is simply our limited mind trying to explain away something that happens that's outside of its context. If it calls it a miracle, we can say, oh, it's God's intervention, and it doesn't upset the apple cart of our normal conception of things. But what the miracle really says is, guess what? Your whole conception of things is bogus. It's wrong. Wake up. It's an illusion. You are stuck in a bubble, and the bubble ain't real. Right? All of these things are happening. You go, oh, it's miraculous. No, it's not. It's just outside of the boundaries that our minds have created that we live with. And as I said, the miracle, the real, eternal, unending miracle, is existence itself. The very fact that you exist and are aware of it. I mean, really. There's absolutely nothing that said you must exist, but you do. And you're self-aware. I mean, hello? Is there anything bigger than that? The very fact that we have this conversation, everything you know, that we can talk about miracles, is because you are self-consciously aware. The whole medium by which you experience anything, we kind of walk right by it, and we're so fascinated with all the stuff that's, wait a minute, the only reason this stuff is happening is because I have the capacity to be able to experience it. That's the miracle. That's the wonder of wonders. That's the thing to go, oh my God. And just fall on your knees. Not in worship to anything, but in sheer awe and wonder and astonishment at the unfathomable nature of conscious existence and existence as consciousness. And on that note, oh my God, I have a ton more questions, but I just, I have to bring it to a close. Thank you all. I think sometime this week or soon, I forgot to talk to my assistant before I got on about this. I am doing a private satsang just for the people who have donated. gpwalsh.com/donate. And there are some people that gave $1 so they could be in on the satsang. It's fine. I have no problem with that. I mean, whatever you can give, you can't give anything. Just being here. Just the most important thing is listen, look where I'm pointing, follow the pointings, take this into yourself, attain enlightenment, and save all beings from suffering. That's how Suan Song used to end all of his letters to his students. He'd only go straight, soon achieve enlightenment, and save all beings from suffering. That is the number one donation. But if you can put a little money in the till, I will be doing a special satsang just for my donors. It'll be like a Zoom meeting where everybody can come on, you can talk, we can ask questions, we can interact on video if you want, or just through audio. But it allows us to be a whole lot more intimate than I can be with just answering the questions on in chat and the like. And I'm trying to figure out a way to be able to do some live interaction here on YouTube. But in the meantime, I'm doing it for special. So if you want to participate in that, even if it's entry fee is $1. If you can give more, and many people have, and I really do thank you. Some of the people have been very generous in their donations, and what is it? Patreon? Yeah, I have an account on Patreon and one with PayPal. If I can actually get the donations up to a certain level, probably around $1,000 a month, I'll be able to get a studio where I could actually do the live satsangs, maybe even in a place in town where people can come in and the like, which is what I'd really hope to do. But in the meantime, anyway, that's coming up. So if you feel like you can contribute something, gpwalsh.com/donate is very, very helpful. But obviously, most important is only go straight to the truth, soon attain enlightenment, and save all beings from suffering. Thank you all. I love you. Namaste.